Welcome to the stream, Abhinav.
Thank you, Darshan.
So for the listeners who are joining in, I'll just tell you who Abhinav is. So Abhinav Chhikara is a designer, maker, and educator from Bangalore who has recently moved to Copenhagen, Denmark with his wife. He's also newly married, and so am I. So right now, what Abhinav is doing is Abhinav runs this cohort-based online education class on design, where he's trying to create the next 10K designers. And before this, Abhinav used to lead the product design at Unacademy, and he has also worked at housing, amongst other things. Today, we are going to learn about the struggles, the learnings he had, and the journey he had been on so far while creating the next 10K designers. So let's get started, Abhinav.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
We should start with what exactly 10K designers is. Would you like to tell us that?
Yeah, man, for sure. So the goal with 10K designers is to create an alternative to the design education options that exist today. I think both of us, we're both from self-taught backgrounds, so we understand this problem kind of deeply. But up until very recently, even with 10K designers, that's the problem I'm trying to address. But up until recently, if you wanted to become a designer, I think the only option you had was figure it out yourself, which is great, right? Because it helps you understand the hustle and having to figure out everything by yourself. But the problem is you lose momentum. It's kind of difficult learning this all by yourself. And the alternatives are just not good in the sense that you can always go to design school, but would you really want to spend 2 to 4 years at a place where the syllabus was made 10 years ago and you couldn't literally UI UX design is a field that can change based with a software update, right? A new iOS version comes out and suddenly all you know about design has changed. It's happened to us. So with a field like that, that's so constantly evolving, you need something that can evolve as well. You need a curriculum that can evolve along with it. So that's the goal with 10K designers, and that's what I'm trying to solve.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you mentioned this because we see this problem. I mean, we are both engineers, and we know that the things that they teach at an engineering college is not something that we actually go out there and use in our regular jobs. And we have always been complaining about how dated the Indian education system is. And design is also something relatively new, but even when it's new, it already feels dated. And I also seen that in recent times there are a lot of schools that have tried to modernize the concept of product design, and they've tried to introduce a lot of new things. But it all feels like they're in it just to make money. And then when you start something like this with 10K designers, and I see that when you share these screenshots of the student testimonials that you have on your social media, I mean, I can clearly see that you're having a big impact. And those people are directly getting placed into, they're getting internships, getting new jobs, and it seems to be going really well.
Yeah, man. It's crazy because I feel like with design, when you start out, you almost feel like an outsider, right? You feel like an outsider if you're self-taught because you don't know how exactly things work. You don't know, will I be able to find an opportunity with the skill set I have right now? So, overcoming that hurdle is difficult for a lot of people. And I think based on, both of us can attest to this, being in the industry, companies are looking for great designers all the time. There is a shortage of finding people who can, design, solve problems, ask these kind of questions. So the companies, huge demand. They really want UI UX designers. However, it feels like that demand is not being met by the existing supply. Yeah.
And when did you realize this, that there was this problem about the demand and supply and how people were learning design? And I want to understand what was that one moment where you decided that you were actually going to go for this?
So, I don't think it was a one big moment. It was a bunch of small moments adding up. But I can tell you one of the big ones, which was when I was at Unacademy, building out the team. So to give everybody a little bit of context, I was an early employee at Unacademy, which is the engineering team was about 10 people or lesser, right? So at that point, hiring designers, I was able to build the initial team because I was able to hire through my network, people I'd already known or worked with before. But beyond that, over the two and a half years that I was there, I interviewed a lot of people. So I had a ton of interviews, checked out a ton of profiles, slowly built up the team. And that's when I realized that, hey, like there's so many applications. There's a lot of good designers out there, but there is always this gap. There's that gap, which is for people from design school, that gap sometimes was not understanding what a startup culture is, right? It's not the same as you've been taught in college. It's not you following a design methodology and doing research for 2 months and then submitting a thesis, right? You ship every week,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes that gap was different. Sometimes that gap was somebody's transitioning into a design from a different career. And now they're like, shit, I don't know what the process is supposed to be. I don't
Hmm.
know. And it was always like when I was hiring for roles, I would look at these profiles and I'd be like, this is so good, but for some reason it's not a. I'm still reluctant to hire them because there's that
Yeah.
gap, and I know that once if I did hire them, I'd be able to fill it. Which is, if we work for 1 or 2 months together, you'll get used to it, and then everything is fine. But then I can't do that for everybody. I can't do that for the hundreds of applications that I'm getting. So yeah, that was one of the bigger things, and then I started noticing it everywhere once I was in this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And one major decision that you made was you made it a cohort based. So for a lot of
Yeah.
people who might not know what cohort based is, could you just explain what that is?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I think we're in an interesting place in online education. COVID has only accelerated it.
Yeah.
But if you look at our options for online learning till up till a few years ago, your options were figure it out on YouTube. Hopefully you find a good playlist and now you can, watch that and it's amazing. Or you go to Udemy, Skillshare. But the problem is it doesn't solve the feeling like an outsider problem, which is you have access to these hundreds of courses. But then do you know, for example, what's happening in the design industry in India? Do you know whether all of that actually applies or not?
Mhm.
How do you actually build the connections necessary? Because if you look at it, design is a small circle. A lot of things happen on referrals. So building those connections, there's really no good way to do it on the internet. And the thing is, this is not an unsolved problem. College has been doing this. The whole point of college is not just the studying, but the fact that get to hang out with all these friends, you get to party with them, you get to, build that network, the alumni, and then the studying is one part of it. However, that doesn't exist online. So the whole idea of the community based learning or the cohort based learning is that it's not a self paced course that you can take anytime and we give you 60 hours of video and say best of luck. There's actually a start date, there's an end date, which means in a year we can only have limited batches. But you work with a bunch of other people who are as motivated as you to go through the entire journey together. You work multiplayer in some ways, right? It's not you solo. You work together in teams on projects. You interact with these other people eventually going to become designers at all of these companies, right? So you're starting to build that network very early on. And then with the mentors as well, the mentors that you work with during this program, you now get to know what it's like working with the head of design while you're studying it with your assignments. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think you have already given us insights on why you might not want to go in the self-paced course direction, but make it a very real-time thing. I also want to understand, now say for example, me as someone who wants to get into design, I come to the website of 10K designers, and then I see that there's this cohort-based course application start next month,
Yeah.
and I'm very interested about it. I send you an email or I apply through the website saying that I want to join. What happens from there?
So since the cohorts are limited, which is I can only do a fixed number of cohorts a year. Like last year, we did two cohorts. This year, very likely we'll do two. We might do a third cohort that's not on UI UX design. We might experiment with another topic. But most likely it's going to be two cohorts this year as well. The first cohort starts on Feb 25th. So unfortunately, not everybody can get accepted. It's limited number of seats. So what I try to tell a lot of people, on the website as well, and whenever I'm speaking to them, is you need to You need to, of course, put some time into your application because that's the only way I can get to know you. And then the way it works is we take it over email. There's a bunch of back and forth that happens. I try to assess whether this person would be a good fit for the cohort. And I try to maintain a balance of the kind of people who are coming in. So a bunch of students, people who are transitioning for their from their career. So maintaining that balance. And then once all of that is decided, then we have a cohort start date and the cohort begins.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what would make for a good student to be eligible to get accepted in your cohort course?
Yeah. So what's interesting is since I've done two cohorts already, I have some data that I can use to roughly form my decisions, right? Now, of course, this is very rudimentary, so I do it on a case by case basis. But the way I normally look at it is if you are in college, you're in your final year, and you know that you want to get ready and you want to do design and you're 100% sure that's the field you want to get into, you're probably a really good fit because this is a proper transition time for you. And if you're the kind of person who is in a different career, so we've had, for example, people from a BCom background, people who are working as engineers, HR, product managers. For those people, it's about some of them want to do it as an additional skill. So I try to see what the reasons around that are. Or sometimes it is them wanting to transition into a job. So I try to see will you be able to put in the kind of time because 3 months is a very compact, tight time, and you will have to dedicate enough time to it. So these are like some of the things that I look at.
And for these people who are looking to transition to a design job from some other field,
Yeah.
what is what are the motivations? What are the common patterns that you are seeing amongst them?
So I would say it is slowly becoming common knowledge, not 100% yet, but it's slowly becoming common knowledge
I mean,
that
even my parents do not know what I do exactly. They don't understand design, so it's definitely not common knowledge.
it's
We're
not
getting there.
it's not it's becoming common knowledge that you don't need a tech background to work in tech in high leverage roles in tech. So normally I think a lot of people early on assumed that you need to be an engineer if you want to work at one of these startups, or you take a non-tech role which is not as sexy, you don't get to work on the product, right? You have to work in business or sales or something like that. But I think it's becoming common knowledge that UI UX design is one of those fields that you don't need a tech background to get into. So, for example, at Unacademy alone, we've hired people who are from an architecture background, somebody who was studying to be a CA. We have somebody who did design school, but not UI UX design, like visual design. We have people from electrical engineering, computer science engineering, a lot of these different backgrounds. So it's becoming common knowledge. And I think that combined with the fact that startups in India today realize the value of design, there's so many more of them since the number of internet users increases, the number of startups increases. So I think this like a potent mixture. So a lot of people want to get into it for those reasons.
There could also be some other motivation factors that why they want to get into design per se, not other things, but
True. I think one common pattern I've also observed is a lot of people have assumed that creative jobs don't pay money. Why? Because for some reason, through your childhood, whatever, of course, there's been nobody in your neighborhood or in your parents' circle who's been a designer. But there has been so many engineers, so many doctors, lawyers, and all of that stuff. So I think there are a lot of people who feel like, hey, I consider myself a creative person in the sense that maybe during school I did this kind of stuff. During college, I was involved with fests. I did all of these different types of things. But hey, creative jobs don't pay money because that's what I've heard. And if I ever
artists
were
always
to, yeah, the starving artist uh,
yeah.
stereotype. And if you tell your parents, I want to be a designer, the first thing that comes to their mind is, shit, you're going to be a starving artist? Like, dude, are you sure about that? Like, very few people, very few, I would say maybe a small percentage of parents understand and give that flexibility, saying, go ahead. We trust your decision. You've probably looked into it. If things don't work out, we can do something else.
when they come into this, do they have some expectation that, say, I'm going to be at least making 7 lakhs per annum or maybe 10 lakhs per annum? Like, do they always have this? Because I imagine a lot of these people might also be those who
Hmm.
might not be getting paid to their potential,
Yeah.
and they might be feeling that obviously money is a big motivation.
Hmm.
And is it possible that they identify design as that lucrative job which would give them more money?
Yeah. So I would say, I mean, there's one another type of person who is applying for this job. So I think we have three main types of people. So one I said was the kind of person who's in college, wants to make a career, somebody who's transitioning. And a small group of people that we also have are people who are already designers. People who are already designers, been doing it for maybe 1 or 2 years, and feel like, hey, like nobody gave me the guidance, and now I'm in a job that doesn't pay well because I took the first job that was available, right? So it's not, I feel like the people who are transitioning into UI UX design, they're also, they want to get into a role that has faster growth. But then I think there's a lot of designers out there who are, their initial salary, their first salary was, let's say, in the 3 lakh range. And now they're getting a 30% increment every year. So it's becoming 4, 5, 6. A lot of them enroll in the program and get a job immediately that's 7 or 10. So yes, salary is a big it's a big consideration as well.
Yeah, and this also reminds me that a lot of people sometimes they ask me about the negotiation and how do you actually scale up to another level in your career. And one thing I would always say to everyone is that never try to negotiate your salary based on what you were earning before.
Mm.
And it is in your rights to not disclose that. I know that companies in India, they would obviously force you to tell you your salary. They would in fact even ask you to submit the old salary slip. And fortunately, that's not the case in Europe. When you
Mm.
apply for a job in Europe, it would all be about the job that you're
Mm.
applying for, whether you're right fit or not, and what are your expectations. If that match, then they are fine with it. They don't really try to negotiate you on that on your old salary. And what happens is, if you try to do that, and if you had a lower salary before, say as you mentioned that you started on a very low salary, and then you're always going to be fighting the battle which has already been lost. You've already started so low.
Mm.
Anyway, so I mean that's just one thing that I would like to share. That do not try to negotiate your salary based on what you were earning in the
Yeah.
last job.
Yeah. In fact, we have an entire session dedicated to just this in the towards the end of the cohort where everybody's applying for jobs and stuff. And one way we say, hey, HR does it because it's a part of their process. And for them to break the process, they would now have to talk to the person they report to and then they report to. However, understand that it's not a legal requirement.
Yeah,
So most companies, if you designers there and the designers really like you, the designers themselves are putting pressure on HR saying, dude, can we hire this person? Otherwise, they're going to get another offer and they're going to join somewhere else. So a lot of times, you probably can reveal your salary, but if you play your cards right, you can, you don't have to be anchored or tied down to it.
yeah. So when a student gets accepted to your cohort-based class, how does the process look like?
So it's a 3 month course,
Mhm.
3 months, which are broken down into roughly 4 modules. So we have, for example, foundation and fundamentals, where we just talk about the tools, basics of typography, color, visual design, layout. The second module is when we start getting into the psychology and UX of things. So this is where we talk about frameworks, design frameworks, product frameworks, how exactly metrics work, a lot of things around that. This is also the part where we get into UX research and how you should approach that as part of the full design process. Module 3 gets into the biz no, module 3 gets into upskilling, which is now that you understand both of these things, what's next? So upskilling would then involve figuring out how do you create interactive prototypes? How do you do things like how do you understand concepts around metrics? How do you work with data? If you have to have conversations with product managers, how do you do that? So you have guest sessions by product managers as well who come and talk about their perspective of things. We also do a crash course in computer science, which is one course, 1 hour lesson on computer science that teaches you everything you need to know such that you don't have to call yourself a non-tech person. So that's our upskilling module. And finally, the fourth module is the business of design. which is where we talk about jobs, we talk about opportunities, we talk about personal brand. We talk about immediately right now, what do you need? You need your portfolio. So every assignment that you've done so far in each module comes together and becomes your first portfolio. This you can now use to start cold emailing. And then towards the end, towards the, so 3 months, that's about 12 weeks. So 12, the 12th week to roughly the 16th week, which is even though the program is over, that's when we have a lot of our placement related stuff. So every week we have a new batch of companies. So about 6 to 8 companies, we call these waves. So you have waves of companies. You email this, we make referrals, your interview process. Typically, most people who've done the assignments, who've made their portfolio, can sit for this. And what we also do is this keeps happening across multiple weeks after the program's over. And we also have these office hours sessions, which is with other mentors who've been a part of this program. So, for example, we had Rahul Bhosle from Housing. He was one of the mentors. You know, your neighbor in Berlin, he was
He's my
also one
neighbor,
of the
yeah.
mentors. So we have these mentors. They help with a lot of this stuff as well. But towards the end of it, then people either typically apply for an internship, they get multiple offers there, or a job, or a lot of them actually choose to stick to freelance and they say, okay, I'll look for a job maybe 6 months later, but for now, I want to freelance, I want to work on projects, and I know my portfolio can be better. Yeah.
And are any of these modules optional? You know, when a student would apply to a typical course in a university, they would have
Yeah.
this. You know, they want to cherry pick the courses or modules that they want to have, and then some would be optional. Do you also have
Yeah.
something like that?
I mean, interestingly, we do. So these 4 modules are the common ones. Everybody needs to go through this. But we sort of have, it's not exactly electives, but it's like electives where we have one entire playlist on prototype, which is high fidelity prototypes with prototype. We've got one entire this thing on Webflow. So we have these which are not exactly part of the core curriculum. You will need it, but the reason we make them optional is because not everybody needs it right now. Like right now, if your goal is to make is a portfolio, you don't need to know prototype. But later, when you need it, you have lifetime access to all the course materials, so you can always come back to it.
So, what exactly comes into the course materials? What are the resources that you provide them?
So interestingly, you know, since it's a cohort-based program, everything is live. So very little is pre-recorded. So these 3 months, the entire cohort, as well as me, we go through it together. So everything is taught live. All the Q&A, all the question answers, guidance, design feedback, everything happens live via Zoom. We have a Discord as well, which is just for the cohort members. A lot of impromptu discussions happen there. But eventually, you know, you have lifetime access to all the live sessions. So if you didn't watch something or you want to rewatch because you're like, oh man, that was too much, you can come and watch that again. What we're also investing in for the future is we're making a lot of these templates which can be useful for you. So for example, if you're a freelancer, what are some good templates on how do you make a proposal to someone? Examples of cold DMs that have worked. So this is sort of going to be like a library of, it's just like smaller bonuses that slowly builds up over time. So that's another thing that you'll also get access to.
So, is this very specific to people who want to get into freelancing, or no matter what their motivations are, if you join 10K designers, you get access to all the resources?
You get access to all. So for example, if somebody doesn't want to do freelance now, the kind of resources that might be more useful to them would be, let's say we do a guest session for cohort 7 in the future. You would still get an invite to that session even though you're from a previous cohort, because now you're a part of this alumni kind of network.
Yeah.
So now once you've done this, you have other stuff that keeps happening even though your cohort is over, these smaller activities that then help you slowly keep upskilling. Yeah.
And what is the role this mentors are playing, and at what stage of the course do they get involved?
Hmm. So the main teaching and everything happens through me. So I'm the main teacher, the main mentor for all 4 modules. However, in between we have a lot of guest sessions. So one of the thing mentors do is do guest sessions for things they are experts at. So for example, we had Arnab Mukherjee, who was, design systems at Ola before. He has a guest session on design systems because he's the expert on that. We have, you know, someone who is a very senior product manager at Flipkart. They are doing the session on understanding metrics. So we have those kind of sessions. But other than that, the main thing that mentors do is help with the guidance and feedback. So this mentors kick in when your first assignment kicks in, which is my classes are on these times in a week, and all the other times you have these calendar slots for when mentors are conducting their office hours. So you have a mentor assigned to your team, but also you can participate in the office hours of any of the mentors. So that way it's almost like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. It's not a linear path for everybody. You can actually choose which mentors you like, the kind of things you want to get into. And the mentors help you with feedback on your assignments. Like they will jump into your Figma, leave comments for you. It could just be questions around, you know, topics that you didn't understand, or it could be questions around how do I apply for a job? What's a technical round in a, design interview? It could be anything.
So I'm assuming that since all of your sessions happen live,
Hmm.
do you only take people who are based in your time zone, which is Asia or India?
So I would say majority of the people are in India. So classes happen at 9 p.m. IST. However, every cohort does have a small percentage of international people, and typically, it's multiple time zones, but yeah, the majority is still Indians. Yeah,
Mhm. And would you also be comfortable in sharing the numbers of 10K designers?
yeah, sure. What kind of numbers?
So could you tell us that how many people have enrolled for 10K designers so far? How does the
Hmm.
placement look like?
Hmm.
And also, I'm assuming that you had a very lucrative job at Unacademy, which you had
Yeah,
to quit to start 10K designers. So is it
definitely,
is it covering for that, or are you making even more than that?
definitely. Okay, so let me start with when I quit my job. Okay, so I quit my job in Jan 2020. Jan 2020, last month at Unacademy. Been there for 2.5 years. That's when they started looking for a new head of design. At that point, I didn't know what I was going to start. I like 10K designers at that point was just the name of the design playlist that I had made on YouTube. It wasn't a thing. I had created, the Telegram group at that point. So it was a small community that was there. But when I quit, my thinking was I'm going to explore in these few months what I want to do. So one of the things I explored was, I just read about this today, but I was exploring like some software for remote teams to collaborate better. I was thinking in that direction. I also had UI sources at that point, which was making little revenue. It was making about $50 a month just through ads. So I was like, okay, maybe I can double down on this. I had booklets.io. That was another thing I was doing, which is, sort of micro learning. That was another thing that's happening. YouTube, of course, had been going on. So at that point, I decided to actually not do 10K designers and go full time on UI sources. So
Interesting.
April 2020 is when I was like, okay, let's do UI sources. Made it a paid product, made it subscription based, and it had a good launch. So in April alone, so April I launched it. I had an email list, so that was good. Launched in Product Hunt as well, and with that, got a good amount of revenue. So I got maybe $4,000 in the first month itself. However, at that point, I noticed that the community, which was now 2,000 people, I think it was on Discord at that point, from Telegram to Discord. Not one person in the community bought UI sources. Okay, not a single person. And to me, that was like, yo, wait, hold on. Something doesn't make sense here, right? What is the point of this community? What is the point of YouTube videos and all of this you know, if it's not something they want, if I'm not using it, I'm not helping these people because they've not bought it. So then I dived further and I realized that, hey, this community, I ran a few polls, ran a few this thing to collect feedback, did a little bit of like UX research type stuff. And I realized the number one thing people were asking for was give me an end-to-end course to learn UI UX design. Because UI sources are still a bit of a advanced thing. Like if you're a designer, you know how to use it. But if you're a beginner, you're like, dude, what is that? I don't even know. And it was in front of me the whole time. People were asking, hey, make a full course. But I didn't want to do it. I was like, let's try this idea, let's try that, let's do this. So then we're going to do 10K designers, put up the landing page, announce the cohort, roughly figured out some plan. And that is how it started, right? So that's like the origin story of last year. All of this happened in 2020. But in terms of numbers, the first cohort had about 30 people, but it had zero mentors. So just me, Mayank, host of whiteboard.fm, he was helping out. We did a few guest sessions here and there, but it was just me. So me with 30 people and doing this. With that, I realized, hey, it worked great, but dude, giving feedback to 30 people is hard. Like each assignment, giving 15 minutes of feedback with 30 people, that's these many hours. It's like 6 to 8 hours of feedback for each assignment. So I would literally have weekends where I would shoot 6 hours of video, and it would be feedback. So I was like, okay, I don't know if this is a great experience for them, but it's probably not a great experience for me, and I can't keep doing this. So the cohort number 2, then I took it from 30 people to 40 people, and we got a few mentors involved. So that's when Rahul, Abhiraj, Arnab, all of these folks came in. And this was a much better cohort. People really liked it. Much better engagement, better outcomes. And it was sort of like the pressure was taken off of me. And now we were sort of harnessing this collective knowledge, which is this person, let's say Rahul works at Hotstar. He is able to give a lot of perspectives that I don't know about. Or Abhiraj works in Berlin. He can talk a lot about what that journey was like. So that really helped. We made teams. Each team had a mentor. We even got alumni mentors. Since it was cohort 2, I could do this. So like some of the top students from cohort 1 became alumni mentors, and they were now able to help, facilitate a lot of the discussions, feedback. So that really worked out for me. So with cohort 3 now, I know for sure that it's not going to be just about me anymore, right? That's might have been how I started with like this whole YouTube journey, but it's now about, okay, how do we do something it is community based. So it needs to bring in people from a lot of different backgrounds. So we're going heavy on the mentors thing. This upcoming cohort is going to have maybe 10 to 15 mentors, probably even more. I will still be doing all of the teaching. So I'm going to be a common mentor for all. I will still help with the feedback and the DMs and answering your questions. But now you have all of these other mentors, and you can choose who you want to sort of learn from. And with this, we are now increasing the size as well. So we're going to have teams of maybe 5 to 10 people, but the cohort size overall is going to be close to 100.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
what's in it for the mentors and for the
So
alumni
mentors,
mentors?
yeah, alumni mentors are participating because they have just completed the previous one, and for them, this period after the program, they get to revisit a lot of these concepts again. And some of the skills that an alumni mentor can really work on in that role is you have this opportunity of understanding how it's like to collaborate much better. So for example, being able to give good written feedback as Figma comments is not something that comes naturally. You have to do it a couple of times, fail, and then you understand, okay, this is how it needs to be done. So for alumni mentors, this almost becomes an extended program where they're still in the thing and they now get to help out having gone through it themselves. And for the industry mentors, there's a few reasons. Number one, and probably the smallest reason, is they get paid for their time, of course. So for them, it's almost like the smaller freelance part-time kind of thing they do. But that's a really small reason. The bigger reason is for a lot of designers out there, like both of us, in fact. Both of us, I feel, in the past few years, we've been in the space where we want to help as many people as possible. With you, that was Product Disrupt, right? With me, it was a little bit of YouTube. There's a lot of designers who want to do that. Most designers do want to, but they don't know how to. So the way I am getting involved there is I'm saying, hey, here's a program. You don't have to figure anything out. All you have to do is show up and I'll guide you through all of it. But you're going to have this time to directly mentor and help these people out. In addition, a small bonus that we gave them was with all our mentors from the previous cohort, we actually did a parallel leadership cohort within this. Right. So we did a smaller
Going very
6
meta here.
Going very meta. So we had a smaller cohort-based program inside this cohort-based program, which was on design leadership. So that was amazing. And of course, this is a good way for them to figure out, how do I become a design manager? How do I become a better design leader? And then this becomes a pipeline for them to hire for their teams. So, it was a win-win that we were able to figure out.
Mhm. And how much does one person have to pay to get into 10K designers?
So it's 75,000 rupees, which is roughly $1,000. And that gives you access to, of course, the 3 month program, but also gives you lifetime access to the community, which is all future cohorts. When we have guest sessions, you get invites to those. When we have these feedback sessions with mentors, if you need feedback for your project, even though you were from the previous cohort, you can participate in future mentor sessions. And you also get to participate in all the placement activities. So, for example, right now, when we did placements for cohort two, there were a lot of people from cohort one who are either freelancing or still working on their portfolio or hadn't quit their job yet, who participated and were able to get jobs right now. So so yeah, that's roughly the way we structure it.
Are there also options for students to choose from different pricing tiers? Like, say, for example, I'm someone who wants to have the course in a very passive way, which is I want to see all the sessions live,
Yeah.
but maybe I'm okay with not having the feedback sessions or mentor sessions. And
Yeah.
then there would be someone who wants the whole thing. There would be someone who also wants this and also additional resources. So, do you have any
Hmm.
tiers for them?
I mean, personally, I've considered it. I've considered doing a smaller version that is maybe cheaper, which in which there's no feedback, but there's break it up and put it together in different ways. But I think, to me, what it comes down to is that might help me get more students, possibly make more revenue, because now my user base increases. But it doesn't really help the students, which is, the minute it becomes self-paced, it becomes similar to another Udemy or another YouTube playlist. And without all of these things together, it's almost like I don't want to give people a half experience. So as of now, I might do it in the future. Not exactly this way, but maybe in a different way. But as of now, it's one tier, one fixed this thing. In fact, so it's 75,000. But however, we do have like financing options and things. So you can either pay that upfront, or you can, pay it as an EMI, 6 months, 12 months, 24-month. But yeah, that's how it works.
What about scholarships? Have you ever thought of having scholarships? So I can give you this one example. I think
Yeah.
Dan Petty does. So he used to do this conference called Epicurrents, and now he's also started his online course. I'm not sure about the online course, but in Epicurrents he used to have scholarships where there
Mhm.
were people who wanted to participate in the conference, but they come since they come from an underprivileged background, they might not have the money for it.
Yeah.
And then he also brought in the companies who want to create a name for themselves. So he brought in companies like Envision and Adobe. And what they would do is they would sponsor the students to get to the conference.
Okay. Interesting.
So what's in it for companies? It shows that companies care for people in the design community. They
Hmm.
can. It's a very good brand value attachment,
Interesting.
right? I mean, it
Hmm.
creates good vibes for them. And for the
Yeah.
students, they also get to do this, and yeah, they would also be willing to return it back, not
Hmm.
directly in money, but there would be other ways to do that. So it just
True.
somehow it works. Have you also considered that?
I actually haven't considered that, dude, because so far my goal was just, let's figure out this whole system of how mentors and this whole thing works. So my priority has been just that. But I think now that it's a little bit more stable, the whole this thing's figured out, I think that sounds like a pretty good idea. So I think we can possibly do something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that could also be this another idea, which is now, say for those people who have been in the design industry for say about 1 or 2 years, so they are early in their careers, but they are not fresh.
Hmm.
And these are usually the kind of people who do a lot of work, but they need constant feedback. So, and they know that it's the only way for them to go move forward if they get continuous feedback on their work.
True.
And And since you get mentors in 10K designers, and mentors, one of the main jobs of the mentors is to give them feedback. So have you also considered bringing these people in who would only pay just for the feedback of the mentors? They don't really want the sessions that you have, but they just want the feedback.
Interesting, dude. I mean that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. But I think it can be done. It can be structured. I think the way I would probably do it is approach companies. I think there's a lot of companies out there who really want to invest in design. And I don't mean the big startups that already have amazing design teams. I think there's a ton of smaller companies who care about design but cannot really afford to have a huge team or like a very experienced designer. So I think there is definitely some room for that. Yeah.
I can also tell you how I came to this idea. So
Hmm.
in the recent times, I've seen a lot of products. What they try to do is, so for, as you mentioned, for a lot of smaller teams who might want to get some user testing or they might want to get feedback on their designs, but since they don't have a large team and they might also not have the budget to hire like a big audit, so
Hmm.
they are always constant. They're constantly in need of getting this verification from outside people or getting feedback. So one segment is these companies who want to run this test, and the
Hmm.
other segment is designers who want to grow in their career. So
Hmm.
which is why they also need feedback. And these are the, I mean, and for me as a mentor, I'm always willing to give people feedback, but I want it to be in a structured manner. And for me to, mentor someone on a one-on-one basis or give them sessions or guide them, like to do a course like you do, that would be
Hmm.
a lot of time commitment from me. I have to prepare a lot of
Definitely.
resources, and
Definitely.
you obviously it's a full-time job, right? You couldn't do this when you were at an academy.
I couldn't. Yeah.
So I think that it's a nice match between people like me who might want to do that, and from the audience side, people who are
Hmm.
designers who want to grow, and companies who want to get real feedback. So
Hmm.
maybe it could work.
Definitely. And what's so amazing is, I'm just realizing this. Both of us, having been in the industry, it seems like such an obvious idea to do this. It seems like, why hasn't it already been done? But I also see that there is no way a university would do this. I feel like academics are so disconnected from the industry that the only thing they can say is, okay, we'll have placements. Okay, companies are going to come to the campus physically and they're going to pick from the small pool of students, versus these kind of models that are way more scalable, use the internet in a proper way, are not location dependent, which is, if my college is in Manipal, I'll need to find a mentor who also lives in Manipal. You can do it anywhere in the world. You can have, why not have the best mentors from Berlin, from Bangalore, from the US, um, actually teaching you?
And when you said it, this is the exact reason why I wanted to start Product Disrupt. How the idea was started was, for me, I also wanted, when I was learning design, I came from an engineering background, trying to do a lot of things, and then slowly discovered design and wanted to grow into that. And this was one of the reasons that I wanted to learn online, because I wanted to learn from the best of the best.
Hmm.
And I knew that that could not happen in just one university. That was one reason. And the second reason, I also knew that I'm not going to be able to invest that much amount of money to go to an university, have a like 4 year or 5 year course. I've also seen people who would first complete the engineering course of 4 years, and then they would go to a design school, which would be another 4 years.
Yeah.
And so they feel pressure into having that degree and like a legit education so that they can tell the world that they are a legit
Yeah.
designer.
Yeah.
And there was this that has been this misconnect for a long time. And this is why what I did was I just went through a lot of things online. There are a lot of people like you and the mentors that you have who would always be willing to give feedback, and there are other people who would openly share their case studies and their processes, so you can always learn from them. You can
Hmm.
ask these people, they will also talk to you. And then the basic thing which you have to do deliberately, which is you have to practice. You
Hmm.
take all of the learnings from them, keep on practicing, and then ultimately you're going to see that you will develop an eye for good design, and then slowly you will also start to make that good design. And
True.
when I had all of this resources, it was very obvious for me to, just give it out so other
Hmm.
people could also do it. But I also understand that it's not something which everyone would be comfortable doing. This is like self-teaching. And self-teaching, you have to be very. One thing is that you have to have great motivation, and the second thing is you have to be disciplined, because your motivation can tank over time. And if you do not build a environment or a practice around it or a habit around it, it's not going to take you to any level. So
Definitely.
for them, I feel what you're trying to do with cohort-based course and with 10K designers, it's great. Before I knew that you started this, and people would reach out to me, I would always tell them to go to this website called hackdesign.org, and it's essentially a self-taught course, which means that when you give them your email, they would send you lessons, and they have structured the curriculum, but it's up to you to go through that lessons and also do the assignments. There's a real connection. A
Yeah.
lot of people might start that but never really go anywhere with it. And for them, what you're trying to do is like the perfect platform, because they also feel there's some accountability here, so much money to do that. It's like a great motivation pressure. You're also creating a good habit for them. They know that they have this session and they have to attend that. If they do not attend it, they might not be able to, they might miss that session. And then there are peers. You also see that other people, they are doing good by learning what you're teaching them. They're doing good in their careers. They're upscaling, and they will also feel motivated by that. So this is like was my monologue to just comment on the work that you have been doing.
Thank you, bro. It's so good to speak to you also because you understand it at such a deep level, and that's 100% true. 100% true. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also very keen to understand that where are you going with this? I know that at some point of time, you might also consider that maybe this is not scalable, because you can only have so many people, and you can only have, there's only one Abhinav, right?
True.
So, and you only have so many hours in the day to teach someone.
Yeah.
How do you think you're going to scale this?
Yeah. So one good and bad thing, maybe good for the students but bad for me, is that I can never be Udemy, right? Which is I can never be 100,000 students taking a cohort, for example. I can't be a place where I have a million students in the way that Udemy does. It's way harder for me to do it compared to Udemy, where it's like Udemy has discounts all the time. They're like 90% off, buy this for 40 rupees. And it's like, okay. So scale is definitely an issue, but the way I'm looking at it is that at some point, the fact that it's a very community based thing, the name is also, I think, implies that it's not just me who's doing it, it's 10,000 other designers out there. I think it needs to become a very strong community based program, which is this mentors thing that for me, I've just started it. But the way I see it is that not a single designer I've spoken to, not a single experienced designer I've spoken to is of the opinion that, oh, fuck it, let them figure it out. This might surprise a lot of people who are beginners, but everybody out there wants to help you. It's just that with their time constraints or what they have going on, it's just not feasible for them to do it. So for me, scaling it would mean how do I get more people involved such that it becomes very easy for them to create some time, give feedback, and mentor people. And then that creates this win-win scenario where the students then benefit from not just I am going to study from, let's say I'm based in Delhi, I'm going to go to Delhi and study at a UI UX design school in Delhi because it's a physical coaching center. But they benefit from that global exposure where you can talk to the best people, not the ones who are in your city. So I think figuring that out for me is the bigger picture. Yeah.
Are you also looking to expand to making it like in multiple time zones so that even other people can benefit from it? And one thing maybe you could also consider, or maybe you have already thought about it, which
Yeah.
is you could also bring in like a partner, which is say like Abhinav version 2, which also does a lot of teaching. He's not just a mentor, he likes another level from the mentor. And maybe then you can move into the direction of creating your own school. Have you considered that?
I definitely have, but I think it's to me it's almost like I want to first give people the taste of being a mentor, an industry mentor. So alumni mentor is a separate thing. That's for people who are, that's sort of how it starts. So you start as a student, then you become an alumni mentor if you've done well. if you've been in the industry for a while, so most of our industry mentors have around 4 years or more of experience. Some even have closer to 8 years of experience. That's then when you're an industry mentor. But I think the level above that is when you're like, hey, this is very satisfying for me. This is something that I've always wanted to do. And that's when they say, hey, I want to actually teach a cohort. I want to actually teach a whole cohort. And this cohort might be a UI UX design cohort, which is how it is right now, but also might be an entire cohort just for freelancers who want to do freelancing. Because there is definitely these different paths and different opportunities out there. But the same way that there's no solid UI UX design program that has existed, there's no solid freelancing in India program that exists, right? Freelancing in India is so different from what Chris Doe might talk about. I love his work, but Indian context is very different from an American context.
I'd been a full-time freelancer for the past 3 years, and this is what I also noticed that we all love when we get clients who pay us in dollars, and there's an obvious reason for that. It's not just paying in dollars, but they also pay it without being a pain in your ass. And I think I would actually consider myself very fortunate that I was able to find a lot of good Indian clients. So some of my major clients, they have also been Indian,
Mm,
and they paid me to a very good standard. I mean, they paid me what I asked for, and working with them was also such a smooth process. I really
mm,
enjoyed that. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I continued on it.
mm.
So there are some nuances. There are a lot of differences between people working in the West and people hiring freelancers in India.
Yeah.
But then there are also some basic standards, or say some basic understandings that you have, or you could also call it principles of working.
Mm,
And obviously, it's not going to be like all the clients are not going to be a good fit for you. You need to
yeah.
identify what is a good fit for you. Then they reach out to you, they give you a lot of red flags when you're having those initial conversations with you. I think a lot of people, they miss out on those red flags, or maybe they just ignore it just
Mm,
because it's coming from a client who might potentially pay them money. So those are a few things, but I mean, I agree with you on a certain level. And then I also know that it can work. It's just that we
mm.
have to deal with it differently.
Definitely. Definitely, dude. I totally agree. I mean, with designers, it's always been the fact that you have multiple streams of income,
Yeah.
right? For most designers, it's at least two, which is you have your job, but I think most people freelance as well on the side. So it is still hard to get into. You need to have some balls to be able to, be like, oh, I'm actually going to ask for money online to a stranger I've never met. I don't think we have that culture in India. And it's a very similar thing to design where you have to figure it out, use the internet, have this thing, fuck it up once, figure it out the second time, by third time you understand. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these are the things that, we can talk about it for the entire day. Uh,
Yeah.
and there have been, you also brought up a lot of topics from this session, which I might want to dig more deeper into. But keeping the time constraints in mind, we can end the stream on your advice to young designers.
Mm. My advice to young designers would be whether you enroll in design school, whether you enroll in the 10K designers program, whether you decide to do it yourself via YouTube, Udemy, any of the options available, no matter what path you take, understand that growth comes down to the kind of feedback loop that you have. And the more open loops you have, the harder it is to grow. A very simple example would be if you do a project, but you don't know whether it was good or bad, and you don't know what can be improved, what's the point of doing that project? You're going to make that same mistake with the next one. That's an open loop, right? This is going to happen in college, right? This is going to happen to you many times. Even once you become a designer, it'll still exist. Closing that loop means figuring out either through mentors like we have in our program, who give you that direct this thing saying this can be better, this is good, do this again in your next time that you do it, or whether it's working at an internship. For a lot of people, even though they are self-taught, an internship really helps them get into the frame of things. So my advice is your feedback loop, keep that tight. the more times that you do it, the faster your growth gets, and then it starts getting into a phase where you are growing at a much faster rate. Yeah.
That's a solid piece of advice. I also believe that there's a lot of power in the feedback loop, and it's where the best ideas come to life.
Mm.
And since you're also a maker, I would ask you another question, which is what would be your advice for the makers now?
Mm. Very interesting question because there's definitely an overlap. Most designers, either it's now or later, will realize that, hey, I'm designing for other people. Can I also design for myself? Can I also make something that I take full control and ownership of? My advice to makers would be don't sit on your ideas. The problem is not that people don't have ideas, people always have ideas, but they don't capture them. That's number one. So maintain a running list just on your phone of the kind of ideas that you have, add to it as often as possible. But once this is done, once you feel like, okay, there's something there, don't sit on them, because if you don't do it today, you don't do it tomorrow. And then 2 years later, it doesn't exist because you didn't do it. It all comes down to what are you going to do today. So my advice is don't sit on it. Make a small version, even if it's too basic. You're like, this is, I can't even call it something. Make a small version because that gives you momentum to do the next slightly bigger version, slightly bigger version, slightly bigger version. And then eventually you have something out there that has taken drops of water to get there, but you now have something that has potential for growth. So don't wait for it.
Mhm. Yeah. So to summarize, get an idea, ship it, and iterate on the go. Don't just sit and wait on your idea.
And that's the feedback loop right there.
Yeah,
Instead of thinking about it,
exactly.
you're putting it out, seeing how people respond, and then it comes back.
Yeah. All right. So it has been great talking to you as always. And I think there are a lot of interesting things that you shared about what you're doing at 10K Designers and also the overall education, design education, and how people are responding to it. So it's been a great pleasure. Thanks for doing this.
Awesome, man. Thank you for having me on. Super fun talking to you.
Yeah. If you have some more time, do you also want to take some questions from people?
Yeah, let's do it. I see the
So
chat
what I
is
can do is,
slightly
yeah,
active.
I think
Let's do it.
here's what we are going to do. If you have a question, write your question down in the chat. We can then invite you to speak from here, and then you can ask your question directly to Abhinav or to me, and then we'll answer. So
One
I think
question.
you do a better job of moderating the chat because you have been doing this for a long time. So you pick the question.
Awesome, awesome. First question: when does this start? The next cohort starts on Feb 25th. We have somewhere around 10 or 15 seats remaining. So it's going to close very soon, maybe in the next 1 week itself. So if you want to apply for that, you can do it. You'll totally be on the wait list, whether you make it to this one or the next. After this one, so this one is going to be roughly March, April, May, a little bit of Feb as well. The one after that would probably be June, July. And then I think that will be it for this year. We're probably only going to do 2 cohorts in 2021.
Yeah,
So let me just do a rapid fire. Let me answer a few that
yeah,
I see. Do you have any free to join community? The Discord, you can go to bit.ly/10k Discord. I'm assuming you
excellent.
came from Discord. I'm assuming most people came from there. But that's a totally free
It's bit.
community. We have,
So it's bit.ly/10K designers.
I'll just post it, bro. 1 second.
I just did it.
There we
Okay.
go. There we go. So that's a community. It has about 3,000 people. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about happens in the community, which is sharing feedback and everything. But it's a self-paced thing. You would have to figure that out yourself. I'll just read the question. But Parag says, if a person wants to be an entrepreneur, should he go deep into design or know the basics? So my answer to Parag would be, if you think you want to be a founder, you can directly jump into being a founder. However, being a designer or being an engineer, for example, as you know, has its benefits because you can design your own product. You can build your first versions yourself. So in the end, I would say I don't have an answer for it because it's a personal choice that you will have to do. Dhaval says, what should I choose? 10K designers or masters if you want to see yourself abroad? So, I mean, Dhaval, this is a perfect place to ask this question because Darshan has moved abroad. So high technically, we're in the same time zone now, Berlin and Copenhagen. I would say a master's doesn't give you a guarantee that you'll get a job, number one. So please don't go with just the thing saying you do your master's and I'm guaranteed a job. You're not. You might have to come back to India. Okay.
So
But you can also, let me, actually, Darshan can tell a story, but you can also go abroad without doing a master's. Darshan, you want to talk about that?
yes, I mean, I can say there are different ways that you can approach this. One of the things that you also need to consider is at what stage of your career that you are in. Now, what I mean by that is if you are a junior, maybe you have a lot of time on your hand that you can also go to a university. And I would definitely tell you that going to a university abroad, doing a master's, and then finding a job there is way more easier than trying to get a job from India and then moving there. Because the way that these countries work is they would obviously want to come to their country when you're going to pay them money, right? Because they also have to cover taxes, and it's like it's more money for that economy. So, and when you go there as a student, you're going to pay like a huge fees, which is not going to come anywhere close to what you're going to pay in India. So that's like a very obvious thing for them to do. It's very easy for you to get a visa there if you're going there for masters, and then once you get that masters done, you'll also have the visa extension for some more time where you can find a new job. So I would say definitely do that if you have enough money and time on your hand. However, that is not the case with me. I was like I'd already been in the industry for about 2 or 3 years, and obviously I did not wanted to go through an formal education again because I had my experience of going through the engineering course, so I would not do that again. And also I knew that I was confident enough that the skills that I've acquired by now that will help me to find a job, and I can do that. And I've also seen that a lot of people have done that, so it's not impossible. And so what I started to do then was I started to figure out what are the countries that I want to move to. And during that research, I identified a lot of cities. Berlin and Amsterdam was two of them. And what you want to do here is you would want to understand that which are these companies who have the experience of hiring people from outside. Because it's very much possible that these companies might already have a process because they have gone through it, and they might also have a dedicated team. So, and it usually happens for companies which are mid-size or larger companies. It's way more easier for them to get you there. So that's again, yeah, a good shot for you to apply. That if you get a job offer from them, they would be agreeing to or willing more they would be more willing to get you to that country. However, you can also find a good job in startups, and startups also like to take risks. But the thing is that whenever these people hire someone from outside, they have to have a very solid case of why they could not find someone locally, because it's obviously a lot cheaper for them. They they don't really have to go through the pain of sponsoring your visa and actually talking to the embassies and visa offices and then getting you here, giving you a relocation bonus and all those things. It's a lot more easier for them to hire someone locally. So you have to make a very solid case for that. So it takes time. It took me 3 years. So in some cases, it can also happen instantly. It's luck also plays a big role into it. So there are different ways that you can go about it, but also consider what situation are you in and what are your motivations. I think then you can find the answer.
Awesome. Love that, bro. By the way, that should be a clip on your YouTube, like a small 5 minute clip on how to find a job abroad, because that answers it really well. Yeah.
I'm not very experienced with that, so I might want to do that, but I'm just not sure that whether I'm going to find the time to just get into it and make those clips.
So let's do this. If there's anybody on this call right now who is a video editor who wants a short freelance project, ping Darshan after this. Say, I will create your clips. All you have to do is give me a link. I'll make clips for you that you can directly upload, and you have a freelance project right there.
Yeah, that could be something that we could actually try out, because I don't mind speaking or articulating my thoughts and those things. The only thing that bothers me is the post production process.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, bro. You're gonna get a bunch of messages after this, by the way.
Do
Yeah.
you want to take any more questions?
Let's take one final one. I don't want to make this
Yeah.
too long for the people here. Let's take this, which is Working as a UI UX designer, but feels like something is missing in my work. Your perspective on joining 10K designers for such a user base. I would say this is actually this feeling of something is missing is a very common feeling. Whether you're a UI UX designer or you're in a totally different job, but you're like, something is missing from my career. Right? Something is missing, which I'm not satisfied with it because of some reason. I'm not fulfilled. So the feeling of something is missing, very common feeling. So I want to anybody who's feeling that, totally natural. I've felt it multiple times in my life. However, the tricky part there is that it's hard to identify what that something is, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. It could be anything. So I would suggest if anybody is in that position, right? Maybe you're an engineer who wants to get into the design field. Maybe you're a UI UX designer who feels that they're stuck. Maybe you are, you know, in between. You want to make a transition. You want some kind of transformation. Let's call it that. As much as possible, try to identify what these areas are. The most common ones are I feel like I'm not growing, which is there's nobody who can give me guidance on what I can do better. So if I don't know how to grow, I feel stuck. Another, this might be, it could also be this might not be the right company for me. Company doesn't care about my growth. For all of these reasons, again, there's multiple solutions. Each of these can have 10 different solutions. However, with the 10K designers thing, if that's what you're thinking about, it can help you with some of these. Let me just say that, which is feedback part, we've got it sorted. Figuring out a job at the end, we've got that part sorted. Making a transition, there's other people you'll be working with, your classmates, your cohort mates, who are also doing the same journey as you. So if you feel like you need motivation, we have that part sorted. We have that accountability. So based on that, I would say do your research, explore your options, and then in the end, you will have to pull the trigger. Yeah.
Great advice. Pull the trigger, don't wait for it, do something about it, and you will ultimately
Yeah.
find something out there. There are a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
So, yeah, on a closing note, if you have any questions about 10K designers, or if you want to ask anything to Abhinav, or even if you want to ask anything to me, you can always reach out to both of us on Twitter. I also always respond to all the emails that I get. You can get pretty elaborate in that. So, feel free to do that. You might also find Abhinav's email on his 10K designers website. Yeah, so feel free to do that. And it was great having you all.
Awesome. Awesome. So, folks, here's one more plug. Go to subscribe to Darshan. You'll find the stream later if you want to rewatch it. Thanks, Darshan. Thanks for this session. Love talking to you.
Have a great day. Yeah.
See you. Bye bye.